Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Music Box. Huggy Knight would like to join me. Bro, hold on. I'm gonna go on D&D real quick.
You're too popular, dude. I don't know what to
Invite
say.
requests.
I guess now's the time to do this.
Yep. Anyway, where are we? Hello, everybody.
Third time's the charm.
Did you just talk over me?
Fourth time's the charm.
Welcome back to the Music Box. This is episode 2 in this episode of the show where I, Bimler, enjoyer of music, give my friend Pyrine
It's me. Ah, that guy.
an album to listen to. Today's episode is Tremonti's new album, The End Will Show Us How.
It did. It did show us how. As a matter of fact, it did.
This album is special because usually when we did the test runs for this and also the first episode and the next episode, I have given you albums that I've known about and have had time to simmer with and enjoy. But this record, we are both new to, as it had just come out, like what, a week and a half ago now? As of recording this?
I think so. At least a week.
Yeah, well, no, it was 2 Fridays ago. So, yeah. It's one I've been anticipating for a while, one of my most anticipated albums of the year, as Tremonti is an old favorite band of mine. Their record before this, Marching in Time, has been one of my favorites, just of all time. It was my first favorite album and has stayed very high for ages, for good reason. I think they have a really great formula, fantastic sound. Tremonti's got great guitar skills, like one of the best players I've ever heard, great vocals, great songwriting, and all that is put, in my opinion, on pretty dang full display on this record. It's much more experimental than some of his previous releases. In fact, I dare say it's his most experimental album. So, yeah. What do you have to say about this album?
I think this is technically the second Tremonti album we've gone through. Again, in one of our test runs, we did one before this, so I'm still very, very new to the Tremonti bus train, the hype train, as it were. I think at the time I was listening to this, like the first time, I didn't really know what to expect. Rock is not a thing that I always engage in, though I fucking love it when I do. And oh my god, this album just blew me out of the fucking water. It was amazing. It was really, really, really good. It is experimental. If you listen to a lot of the older records of Tremonti, you can kind of see that it's going off the deep end. It's being a little bit strange, esoteric, does new things. I think it mostly works. There's some parts where it kind of doesn't really work, but there are a lot of parts where it really fucking does. This album is very, very solid, and I was not disappointed with the release.
Yeah, no, I absolutely wasn't either. I have mentioned a lot in the past, I'll talk more about this later, that I think Tremonti's gotten better with every single release, except for this one. I still think Marching in Time is my favorite from them, but what this thing tries new is incredibly respectable. A lot of its sounds on certain songs vary vastly compared to other projects, and it feels very large, very cinematic compared to certain other things. I think the only album that has near to that level of cinematicness to me might be their album A Dying Machine, but even that I don't think quite eclipses it. The album opens on an incredibly grandiose start with The Mother, the Earth, and I, as well as having several other very cinematic cuts, like, just to name a few, It's Not Over, the title track of the record, the closer, Now That I've Made It. Even the bottom, you could argue, has a lot of grandiosity to it. But generally, it perfectly blends that new mood of, I guess, its sound with the good old shredding, powerful cuts, like Nails, One More Time, Live in Fear, I'll Take My Chances, you know? A lot of good songs like that. But mainly the opener, I think. When that song came out as a single, I already knew this album was going to be different and very special.
The opener is funny because it opens on this really weird-ass, like, 360-degree audio that's going like, wow, wow, wow. And it's like, you feel like you're getting abducted by aliens. But then when it hits with that goddamn guitar, you're blown out of the water. You're like fucking that Freddy Fazbear doll in that one GIF that just gets sent back flying to the TV. And it's like, it opens up and it honestly feels like a Mad Max opening. Like, it's really cinematic. Like, you can fucking feel like yourself just in like a rusty shitbox cruising down a desert lane, dust storm kicking up behind you. It is so goddamn baller, especially like when it starts getting into it. Like around like 125, I think. The main chord line when that finally hits is just so goddamn juicy. It's like a rare steak. It's too raw, honestly.
It's too
Which you
raw.
could say, I guess, about a lot of, like, Tremonti stuff. It always ends up being raw. I'll be honest, there haven't really been, like, a single Tremonti song that I haven't liked. They're all great. They're all great. And I think the opener is just so fucking good. It's like you're entering the mouth of hell, which is so fun.
Entering the mouth of hell is fun?
Yeah.
Have you done it before?
Have you ever played Ultra Kill?
Oh. I guess that game is pretty fun. No, I love the opener. I do think it is one of their weaker openers, but it is definitely their most unique opener, and I think it is strong for that reason. The bridge on the song is absolutely killer. I cannot help but sing along to that. The bridge, to me, honestly, it feels like it's about to hit its peak like 3 different times in the main vocal melody. Like, when it starts, you're like, oh... And then it goes like, and I will embrace it. And you're like, all right, that's it. And then he hits another high note with the always. And then another one when he goes into the second line. And it's like, when is this going to stop being like satisfying? I don't know. I'm getting like way too into the melody of that. But I love it. I think it's great. Really carries the song. And as much as I think it gets a little bit repetitive, which is probably its biggest weak spot for me, that might also just be because I streamed it about 70 times on the day it came out. So that might be my fault. But a song that hasn't gotten old, despite how many times I've streamed it, is track 2, One More Time, which is the latter category I mentioned earlier. This song is easily the most fun single and one of the most fun songs on the album. It just slaps. I mean... You can tell what do you think about it, but
you get into it and it's immediately you get like an electric shock, like it burns you. It's too hot when you get into it. It's weird. It kind of doesn't even start with like a main chord line. They're just doing whatever the fuck they want, but then they just get into they just get into it one more time. Yeah, let there be one last trial. The day is coming. Will there be no survival? I'm like, I have a sledgehammer in my hands. I'm beating up people. I'm like in a mall parking lot. There's blood on my hand. There's a lot of songs on this album. I don't feel like there's a good way to appreciate them unless you're causing physical violence. You know what I mean?
That's definitely true. I think Tremonti is a great band to kill people too.
Exactly.
Yes, I very much agree. And this song's no exception. I remember vividly. It came out around the time Black Ops 6 came out, and I was just playing zombies while listening to it on loop. And it's a pretty good song for that. Just, it feels very much like the proper energy bringer to the album. I think like a tried and true formula for opening records is have track 1 be very cinematic and track 2 be very exciting and like the full hook of the record. And I think the album will show us how it nails it with these 2 songs. It kind of reminds me of the way Marching in Time opened, but I think this one leans even further into that duality.
Yeah. It's kind of like you have to have the Mother Earth and I as the kind of like opener. You can't have it be the meats because if you get into that way too quickly, it's gonna be like way too overwhelming. So you kind of have to get into it a little bit, like easing into it, like a fine dish, only nibbling on the edge of it before you chew into the main what is it? The main meal, the main content. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
It also has a really funny moment at around like 2:18 where they open it with the funky freaky guitar. Big fan of the funky freaky guitar at 2:18.
I'm gonna completely ruin. You know, I'm not gonna ruin it for the viewers because it reminds me of something, and I'm not gonna say it. I think I might have said it to you when we were listening to it, or no, I said it to Jordan. I'm gonna keep it a secret, or maybe I'll tell you after.
All right,
this.
You keep your secrets.
But the riff
Okay,
at that part of the song, right before the bridge, reminds me of another song. But a song that doesn't quite do it as well for me. Then the first 2 tracks, I think Just Too Much, which was the lead single for this album and is track 3, is kind of a bit of a step down in quality just because I think it's very standard. I don't gain a lot exciting from this track. I don't gain a lot of... Like, it doesn't really do anything better than the first 2 songs. It's not really more cinematic, and it's certainly not as... Sorry, a fish just flew by. As hard as One More Time. It just kind of feels like, yep, this is another song on the album. and it doesn't really bring anything new to the table. So I don't know.
The problem is that Tremonti has a bit of a formula when it comes to their music. You listen to, like, I want to say 3 or 4 Tremonti songs, and you kind of get what they're going for. They open up with a hard hit, they enter the main line, eventually they're going to do a guitar solo, they're going to do a bridge at some point, and at the end it's going to kind of be a bit of, breakdown, fade out. They do that they do that basically for every single song, and it works. It's a good formula.
Oh, yeah.
I very much enjoy it. If you are hungry for that kind of dish, Tremonti's always going to deliver. Problem is that I feel like just too much, like you, is just a bit too formulaic. It's just a bit too by the numbers, and it just doesn't make it very memorable. It doesn't make it very much stand out. It's not bad. Like we should say it's not bad. It is enjoyable, but the problem is when you're surrounded by peak, being just all right can be kind of a death sentence.
Yeah, especially when Peak looks like track 4.
Guys, did you know that you should shove rusty nails into your skull? You should do it. You should rest your head on a bed of nails. You should do it. You should do it. It's a good idea. I love Nails. It's a really good track.
It is
I
a
think
really
it might be
good
my favorite,
track.
honestly.
It's up there. I mean, Nails, that track, for such a short song, has so much going on in it. I genuinely, I've said this a million times now, but when I was first listening to the album, when it released, at like 1 a.m, and I heard this song, after the second chorus, they go double time on the instrumentals for the guitar solo. And I straight up just remember asking myself, like, are they allowed to do that? Is this cheating? I'm not sure about about the rules and regulations here. This goes too hard. Like,
we gotta send like the musical SWAT teams in there, gonna like, go, tackle him. He's not allowed to shred that hard.
Like on certain other songs that do something like that, I would argue it wasn't earned, but the song already was going ridiculously hard, and I felt like this was just like an upshift in gear that they hadn't really done before, and I really loved it. Also, the triplets on the back end with the drums, are the kick drum is absolutely phenomenal. Just such a weirdly complex song for such a short song. It's like the second or third shortest song on the album, I think. And it uses its length remarkably well.
I really respect a short song that can do, like, so much in just such a very, like, again, a short period of time. It really is indicative of good design, because it means you're able to do more with less, which is great. It's so good. It does mean probably our boy Tremonti probably fucking died while making this, because I think my hands would explode if I was trying to play this in guitar. But, maybe he's built different. I wouldn't be surprised if he was.
Yeah, no. And whoa, I've moved. This is life-ending stuff. I'm gonna cry. Run it back. Don't do that. No, that's not how I sound.
5. You are 5.
I'm not.
That's mean, I'm sorry.
I'm not 5 years old.
I'm sorry.
We want to talk about a song that uses its length well, but is not super short. It's Not Over. This is the classic Tremonti epic. This is a song that builds, and eventually you find yourself being carried by the just raw emotion and power brought by the instrumentals. I mean, the way it starts is very dramatic, very cinematic, has some of Tremonti's most compelling vocal performances and lyrics as well. Great chorus, but as the song builds, especially once it starts to head towards the bridge and the instrumentals just kind of start flying, flying is really the only word I can, like, conjure to describe how that feels, because it's so uplifting. It just feels like I'm being carried by the song, and it's a really unique feeling. I don't think a lot of other bands can manage as consistently as Tremonti, and I think It's Not Over is just another very mint example of that.
Mm-hmm. It kind of carries you into that moment. Like, it picks you up, puts you in like a trebuchet, and just sends you soaring. It's really interesting, like, how you can even do that where something that still goes this hard. You would expect something that's like a bit more emotional, a bit more like into evoke like a feeling within you would be just a tad bit softer. And while it isn't as like kill you, shove a nail in your brain as Nails, it's still like it's not soft. It's rock. It fucking just slaps so hard. Some of the lyrics are really good too. Built a cage that trapped me here. Fucking love that. So that's a really good one. I will say I'm probably not the craziest about this song on the record, though I do recognize it's good. I think the reason I probably just don't end up really caring for it is because outside of the moments where it kind of does let you soar, is it does feel like it's a bit too like what's the word? I don't want to say repetitive, but like not as engaging to me as other parts of the album. Not like it's bad, but it's like it doesn't hook me as hard as maybe like the 2 tracks it's in between would. But it's still very, very solid.
That's true. When you mentioned the 2 tracks out, it's in between. I mean, it's not quite as much of an issue as Just Too Much, because I think It's Not Over is incredibly good on its own, unlike that song. But you want to talk about the tracks in between. The next song, the title track, The End Will Show Us How, is far and away my favorite song on the record. When this single came out, oh my god. I was so excited for the record after this. And I mean, I wasn't disappointed, even though this still is my favorite song. It's just, oh my god. This song is even more so like the perfect Tremonti epic. I think it has the best lyrics on the album, one of the best instrumentals, one of the best progressions, and arguably Tremonti's best vocal performance ever on any song.
Yeah,
like, genuinely, this album, or this song is magic.
He's not wrong. I was struggling to choose like a favorite one because there's a few highlights. The End Will Show Us How was a close second. There are just some parts where Tremonti, I swear to God, this is the kind of thing where it's like you're singing this, you finish, you smash the microphone on the ground, and your fucking boss screams at you because that's the $200 Yeti microphone that you just smashed, but you had to do it because it went so hard, It's like
very hard.
Oh my god. The whole album is like a journey. It's cinematic. It takes you through the steps, and if you kind of listen to it, you can kind of like start formulating a story around it in your head. And I swear to God, the end will show us how it's just so much of like, it's all of that condensed into a single song, but also still works as an individual piece, and still manages to make you want to scream and kill people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it makes you want to kill people, because I think the song actually has a very optimistic undertone. But, I mean, some of the lyrics on this track are, like I said, it has the best lyrics on the album, in my opinion. Everything from, like, the starting of the song, like the passage to the cynic in me, a path that leads me to, hold on. Sorry.
The light that led me here left only darkness now.
That's
a good one.
The bridge as well, yes. The chorus is so memorable, and it really feels like a single beam of sun cutting through the clouds to me. Like I said, I think this song is very optimistic. I think it has very uplifting feeling to it. Whereas, like, yes, things can be bad. Things are bad, frankly. But there is something else. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You must just keep pushing forward, and I think it's awesome. I don't really know what else to say about it. I adore that track.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think this is kind of where your interpretation of the music and mine kind of branch off, because I think you kind of think this is a bit more of like an optimistic, like an uplifting thing. You're crawling yourself. You're getting out of the darkness. It sucks. I kind of listen to this track, and to me, this feels more like desperation, like straining, reaching. It's not as if the end goal's any different. You want to get out. You want to have it be better. But instead of it being like ascending from hell like a noble hero, you are like crawling up it. Your like hands are raw. You're tearing off your nails. They're bloody, and you are just reaching for that light with like pure desperation because there's nothing else you can do. That's kind of where it feels to me, with a lot of like the droning and the pulling, almost like the instruments kind of seem to do with each other. It seems to like pull itself forward to me. I don't know. I mean, got that kind of vibe for a lot of this after the songs afterwards.
No, that's fair. I definitely don't think this album is very sunshine and rainbows. But I do think, that it's like I said, I think it has optimistic undertones. I don't think it's an entirely like happy record. It's not at all. I mean, Jesus, some of these songs are very heavy, very almost scary at times. But especially this song very much feels like being at a point where things are falling apart and having, like the title of the album says, the title of the song says, the end will show us how. Like, when everything falls apart, you find a new perspective, you change your view on things, maybe change your approach, and it'll, that strife, that like struggle will show you how to push on. And I have more to say about that on later tracks, but it reminds me of the story about the guy who had thrown himself off of the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. And he talked to people. He said, I realized when I was falling in that moment that every problem in my life could be solved, except for the fact that I was falling off the Golden Gate Bridge. But it speaks to the fact that, like, when he had been put himself in that situation, the point of no return, the end, perhaps, that it just opened his eyes and put a new perspective on the things that were hurting him before, as they all seemed so small by comparison. And I think there's something really strong to be said about that. I think this album kind of dabbles in that to me. But, yeah. The next song, Tomorrow We Will Fail, I think we can both kind of agree is a little bit of a weaker one. I do like it. I think it's got a cool sound, pretty experimental, and there are some moments on it that I quite enjoy.
It's Just Too Much.
But yeah, it is kind of similar to Just Too Much. I don't think it's as bad. Like, I don't think those issues are as glaring, but I do think it does drag the track down for just being a little bit samey.
Yeah, I can't help but think, like, I don't know if it would be better to either replace them or redo them or just remove them altogether. It's not like, again, they're bad tracks, but they're just kind of there.
Yeah.
It just feels like filler to me. And it's not damning or anything. It doesn't take down the album for me. It's just like, okay, I guess we got to get through Tomorrow Will Fall to get to the next song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I definitely agree. What was I going to say? I think it's proof that, honestly, Tomorrow We Will Fail is, I think, proof that Tremonti is more than just the sound experimentation. Like, a lot of people that I've shown, not a lot of people, but some people that I've shown this band, one of the biggest criticisms is that, but all the songs kind of sound the same, and I don't think that's necessarily, like, what I would say is the bad thing about Tremonti, if there is one, because they made Tomorrow We Will Fail. That song sounds very different, but it feels kind of samey. It doesn't feel like it does a whole lot. Like, I think that song is one of the more experimental ones, like, sonically, the way it opens on that distorted, or not distorted, but, like, warped drum beat, and the bass, it's, like, really unique, really different for them, but it just kind of ends up feeling the same. And songs that don't really deviate from that formula too much, like Nails or the title track or One More Time, in terms of what we previously mentioned, feel refreshing, feel exciting, despite doing things the band has done before. Another similar track that does this is I'll Take My Chances. I think that track still feels refreshing and exciting, despite kind of being just a very hard track following a very Tremonti formula.
I actually quite like I Take My Chances, I'll be honest. It kind of reminds me of Moby Dick. If you listen to it, you can kind of get, like, that swaying of a ship canter on it, and I do like it for that. It definitely opens up with another die, kill you intro, like, blast your head in with a shotgun intro, and I do like that. I always respect being killed as soon as music starts, but I do also admit, like, it does fall into a little bit of the same pitfalls I think Tomorrow We Will Fail and fucking Just Too Much does. To me, though, it's not as glaring just because it feels more fun to me. It's a song that doesn't really take itself hyper seriously. It's a lot more just like, oh, we are jamming, we're having fun, and I like it for that. It doesn't really try and be much more than that to me. Obviously, there is substance if you look at it, but when I listen to it, I don't really care for that. I don't really listen to it. I listen to it because it's a fun song that makes me feel like I'm a pirate fighting a massive white whale. Holy grail.
All right. I can't say I completely get the pirate comparison, but I do definitely agree. I think it's a little, like I said, it is kind of following that Tremonti formula, but it still manages to be exciting. And I think definitely the part that would make it sound a little bit samey for me is because it's not that much of a refresher after Tomorrow We Will Fail, and also the tracks that follow it are much better in my opinion, especially the next song, The Bottom. The Bottom is, like, kind of a sleeper highlight for me. That chorus is so memorable, has a lot of oomph to it. It's one of the most sonically varied on the record. I love the way it opens the bridge. It reminds me a lot of their earlier work, and a lot of that experimentation, which I think is really cool. Just generally, it has a lot of power for not being something that's trying to kill you as much as maybe I'll Take My Chances. But yeah.
I quite like The Bottom for a similar reason. I think you made a very good point about being being a bit of a sleeper record, because you don't really remember it until you kind of come back upon it in the album. It's very, very. It's one of those things that's like, oh my god, this song's actually good.
Really good. Yeah.
it does that. whoa, it's doing that. I remembered that was pretty freaky. That was pretty
Yeah.
good. It's again, it's probably honestly tied for another one of my favorites. Like between the title track and this, it's tied for second place at least. But then again, it's hard to choose favorites when it comes to Tremonti because you'll listen to the music and be like, dude, that's my favorite song. Then you get to the next song, dude, that's my favorite song. Then you get to the next song, it keeps happening. It's like Sisyphus.
Yeah.
It's madness.
No, that's pretty real. I don't think it's my favorite deep cut on the record, like non-single, but it is definitely up there. And I think, honestly, thinking about it now, I think it does a lot of the things that Tomorrow We Will Fail tries to do, but better. I think it's just a much more effective song.
Now that you mention it, I kind of agree. It makes me wonder what they really did differently. Because I'm trying to think. When it comes to those songs and when it comes to these ones, you're absolutely right what you said before. They're not really changing up the formula too much, or when they are, it isn't really helping them. So I'm trying to think, what did they do differently to make those songs work?
Because I know.
What?
First thing is I think it's much more thematically cohesive than Tomorrow We Will Fail. I'm still not entirely sure what that song is about, but what the bottom is about is very clear, is that in moments of struggle you can't lose yourself and you need to remain, true and caring and, don't forget your heart or else you'll find out how hard you fall, right? It makes sense. You can get it. And also I think its sonic, deviations from the norm are more subtle and nuanced maybe than the more obvious ones on Tomorrow We Will Fail. So it's kind of like a flip thing. I think the sonic changes are more subtle and that's good, and I think the themes are more obvious and that's good. I think that's what makes it a stronger song to me. But yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think you're speaking wisdom right there, Mr. Bimler. I think you're speaking straight wisdom.
I do that every once in a while. Yeah. I'm very wise.
Once in a blue moon, you can give good advice.
Once in a long, long while. But
I always give good advice. I'm just gonna say that right now. I'm always right. I'm always factual.
I mean, yeah.
I'm always the best.
You are on top. That's like the whole thing. Instead of being
I just
on
want to make that
the
clear.
bottom. Oh, that's clever word. So the next song is called Live in Fear, which is what I'm doing after making that joke. Which I think is honestly, and I know I'm kind of now reusing the same talking point I did with the bottom, but I feel like it's almost a better I'll take my chances, as in it has a very similar kill you instrumentation, but it's just more memorable to me. I love the chorus on it, just like I love the chorus of the bottom, but it kind of has a very different tone, whereas like the bottom almost has a more like a persevering, pulling forward energy. Live in Fear is very oppressive, scary vibes, as its title would imply. It really feels like, it very much feels like a last hurrah for the album in terms of its more like gut punchy, hard tracks, and I think it's incredibly effective. No.
I freaked out when the guitar solo came on at like 2:55. I was like, I was like hyperventilating. They need to get me like a fucking breathalyzer. I was on the floor.
It was one of the best on the album, I think, yeah.
A lot of like these guitar solos, especially that one. If I'm like dead on the floor having a heart attack, put like earbuds in my ears and put that on. I will resuscitate. I will get back to life. I'll come back to life like a fucking vampire.
Your heart will start beating with the kick drum.
My heart will grow 3 sizes that day, like the Granch.
The Granch?
Yeah.
Who's the Granch?
So you can be a saint.
What?
Or you can be a Grinch.
You said Granch with like an A. Is it like the Grinch, but he really likes a certain condiment?
I like how Live in
carrots
Fear also
in
feels
and...
like biblical judgment, like
or maybe he lives on a farm.
Judgment.
Maybe he lives on a farm and gathers
like
a lot of animals, and he's very hick. Like at a ranch. Because he's the Granch.
What?
Well, you tell me. You said his name.
I mean, I'll be honest, my brain just, I kind of like blacked out for like a second. Like for 30 seconds, I just saw nothing but darkness. I didn't hear anything. There was just like a flashbang sound. What'd I say? Did I say anything weird?
What? No. You would never.
Okay, good.
But yeah.
Do you have anything else to say about Live in Fear?
No, not really. I want to get to what is probably my favorite deep cut on the record, which is the track Now That I've Made It, the second to last song on the record. Oh my god, I love this song a lot. I think it is It's one of the more like cinematic spacey cuts. I love the way that it opens. It feels so epic. It feels like you're standing in the rubble after something really catastrophic has happened, but you're like you're prevailing. You're on top. It just has that really epic feeling about it. The chorus has a very similar energy. The lyrics on the song are very touching, very hard hitting, like certain songs on the record, like the title track, like It's Not Over, even like The Bottom. And the song, I remember last time we talked about this, we had very different interpretations of it. The way that I see the song, actually, you know what? No, you should say it first. I want to hear yours first.
So the way I kind of saw this before, and the way I kind of see this entire album is reaching for a goal or an expectation that ultimately isn't worth it. That ultimately you convince yourself it's going to solve all your problems, and it's going to fix you, and it's going to do it. But the more you start developing into it, the more you start like approaching it, the more it costs you and yourself and your own like livelihood. Maybe you're like abandoning loved ones. Maybe like you're doing it to like the detriment of your own health. And like this song to me is just moving forward despite better judgment, despite thinking, dude, I shouldn't do this. Dude, I should not. Towards a goal that ultimately just isn't worth it. That's not gonna fix it. Kind of like a lot of like revenge plots, you know what I mean? That's kind of like a big thing about this album, it kind of feels to me. It's still optimistic. It's still like, we can do this. But the thing is that the way I kind of feel about this and like a lot of like the lyrics and stuff like that speak to me is it is reaching out of desperation, not because you want an escape, but because you want to like close that hole inside you or something like that.
Yeah. See, I view this track, and I mean, I talked about how I view the album in a very different way, and when we talked about the title track, but in this song, I view it in a very different way, because I think, like I said, it's not necessarily a happy song. Look to the line on the chorus, now that I've made it, there's space between us, or I can't look down or I'll fall. It still very much, to me though, feels empowered, feels optimistic, feels like, I mean, the fact that he's saying now that I've made it, he has made it through something or to something, and the way I view this is from his position of like being an artist who has succeeded and somebody who's maybe a public figure, especially with that line, there's space between us. I think of a Markiplier quote right now, actually, where he was like, I remember watching a video somebody made of like a lot of fan art and different fan creations for me, and I was crying, and it was one of the things that got really memed of him, and he's like, because I realized in that moment I will never have an intimate, like, individual connection with any of my fans anymore. I'd gotten to the point where it's just not possible. And even with people, like, there's a certain level of alienation that comes with that success, and I think this track very much highlights that. But I also think it just plays along to the lesson learning as well. Like in the bridge, when it's like, it talks a lot about like when you find the truth is killing you, or how you pay a certain price. And I think, I don't know, it feels very insightful and very acknowledging, but it still feels triumphant to me. I don't know, maybe I'm delusional.
Or maybe I'm the delusional one. I don't know. We both have different interpretations. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think there definitely is some overlap.
But
which means we're both right. Consider that.
Yes, we're both right and also handsome.
That's true. My mom said so.
Yeah. But I think a track that is definitely very unrelenting in its sort of not optimism is the closer. All the Wicked Things. Yeah. Pretty easily the most experimental song on this record, by the way. I think it has a lot of cool ideas. Like, that sound at the start of the track is so weird for Tremonti. Like, they just don't do stuff like that. But it's very cool.
It's funky.
It's
like,
funky.
I know you haven't seen it, but it really reminds me of, like an Insane Clown Posse intro they do. They do that shit all the time, and it's fucking weird. And I don't mind All the Wicked Things for being a weird experimental track. I think it's good. Like, I enjoy it. It's just, like, as a way to end the album, I struggle to think, is this the way they should have done it, or should they have done something else?
Yeah.
Because it isn't, like, all-time favorite for me.
No, you're very honestly true on that. I think it's honestly, it's kind of like a very flip side song to the previous closer, to their previous record, Marching in Time. That song's very optimistic. It's about not letting the world change you and remaining, good, pure, giving, etc. Whereas this song almost feels like the opposite, where it's like, the world has not changed, even though we have torn it apart, even though humanity's gone, which I think is honestly like a little bit of a gripe I have, is I think that line in the song is just like, really? You couldn't have come with like a more eloquent way to say that. It just says humanity's gone, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But the idea that, like, oh, the end times are here, everything is in ruin, everything is falling apart, yet nothing has changed, I think is really interesting. Because it does kind of feel like every year that passes now, especially since, like, COVID hit, at least. And maybe this is just, like, me getting older, but also just, like, in general, feels very much like, oh, yeah, we've just been living the end of the world, like, in a perpetual loop for a long time. Things keep seeming to get worse, yet nothing really seems to change. And I think that's really what All the Wicked Things is about. And I think it's very compelling on its own, but as a closer, I'm not entirely sure.
I agree. It's one of the things, like, I struggle to think what else they could have done. Like, should they just ended it up now that I made it? Because that is a pretty good one, but at the same time, I do like a buffer track to have some more finality to it, to have, like, a bit more of a let you off with a bit of a sloped ending instead of just dropping off a cliff. Like, now that might admit it kind of would have done. But at the same time, it's just like, should they have done it? I don't mind it. I think it's a good track. I think as an experimental one, it's quite good. And I don't mind, like, Tremonti trying to do more experimental things. I thought they did a pretty good job. Like, it's obvious that if they want to do different things, you have to just try and see what works. And I thought, like, this is a good stepping stone. If they end up doing another album that's more experimental after this, I hope they take what they learned from this one and end up applying it to making it just absolutely baller premium, as you will.
Oh, yeah, no. I think they will. They were definitely trying a lot of new things on this record. And honestly, I think my biggest complaints about it, like, generally, are the ends. Like, I don't think it starts the strongest, and I definitely don't think it ends the strongest, but I think most things in between are absolutely wonderful. I think it has near the same highs as Marching in Time, with just a couple more lows than I would say that album has, but it sits very solidly for me at, like, number 2 in their discography. Even though it's not an improvement, it nearly rivals it in quality at times, and I can really admire that, especially with how much they were trying on this record. And if you want more of a mixed bag, I don't really know if there's a better album to choose from than The End Will Show Us How. It's a good mixed bag, though, I should clarify, because I feel like mixed bag is kind of a iffy term. I wouldn't say that about this record. I think you're mostly going to be rewarded more than you'd be disappointed.
Would you say if someone wanted to get into Tremonti, would you recommend this album to them first?
Ooh, no, I would not. Not because it's bad, like I said, I love this album, but because it is so weird, and I feel like it's probably better if you get a little bit more of an idea for their general sound and formula before seeing how they toy with it more and divert from it. Like, I think Marching in Time may be the perfect entry point, also because it's my favorite, but because it does, like, the perfect mixture where it experiments a little, and when it does, it succeeds on it. Not even nearly, every time. I think the not wackier, but, like, more different tracks on that record are all great. And the ones that are more by the books are also all great. I mean, there's, like, one song I'd say is just all right on Marching in Time. If you're wondering, it's Would You Kill. That's probably my least favorite song. But I think that album's perfect because it's a great balance. It doesn't do a whole lot different, and it can really give you an idea of where Tremonti has been and where they are. But after that, I would say, yeah, go for it. And Will Show Us How as a second album is not a bad pick.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think in just the way, like, Marching in Time just conveys itself, it is pretty much the perfect stepping stone. But I do really, really, really like The End Will Show Us How. I think in terms of, like, my enjoyment, Marching in Time's a lot more of, like, very balanced. It's more of a straight line, while It'll Show How kind of goes a bit more, like, up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
I think there's some higher highs for me. There's some tracks on The It'll Show Us How that I kind of like more than some of the tracks on Marching in Time. But as, like, an experience that's, like, that's cohesive, I think that I'd probably end up picking Marching in Time anyway, just because I kind of want... If I want to listen to an album, if I have like an hour to kill it and I'm sick in the car, I probably would just put on Marching in Time because I think the Initial Show is very good, but at the same time, if I have to reach over to my phone and hit, yeah, I don't really care for this one. I'm gonna skip it on that. It's not. I don't think I'd skip any songs on Marching in Time, to be fair. But I still really like the Anal Show Us How. I still really like it. Tremonti is like musical candy, where it's just like, you could just fucking, just eat it up. It is just delicious. Just delicious every single time. Maybe not the best for you. Maybe don't eat like 1,000 Tremonti songs at once. It could be a bit of overkill. But it is very, very, very solid, I'd say. I think if I were to give my rating, it would be a 91.
I kind of gave most of my thoughts on it already. I think it's very varied, and I think it works more than it doesn't. But that can occasionally drag the quality of certain songs down, especially when it fails to experiment in an exciting way on songs like Just Too Much, and also kind of Tomorrow We Will Fail. Although that one does try and experiment. We talked about that already, but. In general, yeah, like I said, this is probably my number 2, and while I do think there's a little bit of a distance between that album and Marching in Time, I'd give Marching in Time like a 95. I do think it's great. I really enjoyed it. I'd give this album a 90, maybe also a 91, like around there. Very solid stuff, 91. Not disappointed at all, and I can see this being up on my list at the end of the year for some of the best albums. But, yeah. Let us know what you guys think about it in the comments down below if you've heard it, and if not, you should totally go listen to it. Next week, we'll be talking about this album. This one right here. This one. Now, as I mentioned in a caption at the start of the video, this video is being re-recorded. We've actually already listened to it, and I think Pyrine will agree with me. This is going to be a very exciting episode, so stay tuned.
I am fiending over this one. You better fucking watch it, or I'm going to come to your house, I'm going to break your kneecaps with a baseball bat. It's all good.
That's rude. Why would you do that?
Because I'm a fiend.
Oh.
This album.
Oh. And I am too. But we'll see you guys, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. Thanks for watching. See you guys around. Bye-bye. 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 We're not going to do that outro every time. That's terrible.
We have to. We have to.